everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. This is the Sales Hacker webinar of 3 surefire ways to reach your prospects and drum up revenue. We've got a lot of great ideas that we're going to talk about today, and I'm very, very excited to have 2 very special guests with us today. Who is also our not only on our panel, but also our host is Vidyard. Katie's been with them for about 2.5 years. And started really the team from 2 reps and got them up to about 20 outbound prospecting reps, as well as 5 marketing inbound lead reps. And I think, that's a whole other webinar that we can talk to you about.
Yeah,
and I think
definitely.
people would love to learn about that sort of scale and those kinds of things. So we're very, very glad to have you. We also have Tonni Bennett from Terminus. I've gotten to know Tonni very, very well over the last few years. And Tonni, your role keeps shifting and changing because you guys are growing so fast. So if you want to tell everybody what's the title this month, what's your primary focus aside from ramping and hiring and executing well on sales targets?
Still director of sales, but since we're a startup, we're moving fast, growing fast. That involves a lot of things that traditionally a director of sales may not do. Everything from sales ops to leading the team to having conversations about strategic growth in the next year. So
that's great. Again, 6 other webinars. We'll sign up for more of those. As we get started, I do want to remind people, if this is your first webinar with us, thank you so much for joining us. We're excited to have you. There is a questions box in the control panel. Please ask your questions as we go along. We certainly will do some Q&A at the end of the session, but oftentimes the questions coming from the audience early really help us dig in a little bit deeper in understanding and grasping some thoughts that perhaps we haven't necessarily thought of. So let's first sort of start at a high level, right? We talked about this as we were prepping, is that what are these 3 surefire ways, right? And we really came up with 3 high-level topics, and then we're going to dig into each one of them, but I do want to give these to the audience so they can think about things. One is we keep hearing about this personalization, right, and what does that really mean? And when we had this conversation last week, we sort of came up with 3 thoughts around that, is that you need to humanize, you need to customize, and you need to personalize. That's what a very high-level personalization means, and so we're going to talk about what each of those pieces mean. The third piece that we also talk about is diversification, right? Understanding your cadence, defining what your cadence may or may not be, testing different pieces of your cadence, how to incorporate social media in your cadence. There's a topic that's been going around lately that I think people recognize but they never thought about, which is you can actually have 10 social touches to someone before you ever send an email or a phone call, right? So that's a very different way to review it as opposed to, let's sort of just jump in and email and dial and email and dial and email and dial and then a LinkedIn connect. So, creating that level of diversification that works for you. And then sort of the third thing was, how do you track and adjust this stuff, right? How do you manage that part of the process around it so that you can really focus in on those things? So sort of starting with there, let's start, with Katie, as you brought up this concept of sort of humanize, customize, personalize in our conversation.
Yeah.
Tell everybody what that meant to you as you guys see it at Vidyard.
Yeah, so like everyone's talking about, when you're going outbound now, there's so much competition for inbox space, and you can't just be that generic email. It just doesn't resonate anymore, and people see that coming, and it falls off to the wayside. So when we were kind of talking about the 3 different ways that you can break down the word personalization, because it can be so broad and it can mean so many different things, that if we break it down to these 3 topics, how do you humanize it, how can you customize, and then how can you kind of ultra personalize that message? And when you look at it from top down, humanize, it's what kind of prospects are you actually reaching out to? So what is your ideal customer profile? So really knowing that, and when we were really starting to talk about this concept as well, I know we mentioned that having that really strong sales and marketing alignment is you know, it's pretty much table stakes at this point. Like you have to have that to, you know, even think about going forward, because, you know, your reps and your SDRs, you know, they're not going to be the ones that come up with, okay, here's our profile, here's what we're going after, you know, here's the collateral for them, here's the content that you can use. You really need that strong alignment so they can help really arm you with that information. And then if you take it down a notch to customize, you know, it's looking, you know, now you have your ideal customer profile, but looking at it by role. Okay, you know, what do VP of marketing care about? What do CMOs care about? Why am I going after them? And then kind of peeling it back one more layer on the personalization section, you know, going after, you know, Richard Harris specifically, what does he care about? You know, how is he trying to grow his individual, you know, consulting business? How is he doing this, this, and this?
It's all about Springsteen. You bring up Springsteen, you got my attention.
Yeah, good to know. Good to know. So,
and
you
it's
know,
out there. It's out there on the social media. If people do their research. That's how I know if people have done their research, because they'll bring it up to me.
Yeah, well, and that's the message, right? Like, there's so much content out there about individual people. You can't show up and not know. You just can't, especially if you're selling to marketers in the marketing space. Like, they're so prevalent out there. So I'm sure
Tonni,
you guys come across that too, Tony.
Yeah, how do you guys see this? Like, what does humanize, customize, personalize mean, you know, over at Terminus for you guys?
Yeah, so mirroring a lot of what Katie said, I think she's thinking about it and speaking about it a lot in the context of the SDR side, although what she said is applicable to both. And I come at it a lot from the AE side since I manage a team of account executives. But when I think of humanize, I think of humanizing the conversation, meaning sometimes in business conversations, especially when we do over-the-phone sales, it's easy to feel like you're talking to robots or a thing versus a person. And so bringing personality into the conversation. So I think it's kind of two elements of the humanization part of it. And one is being yourself on the phone. I know that sounds obvious. I don't want to say something that, you know, you feel like you already know or doing, but I will say throughout my sales career, I think it took me a good 2 years to really do this myself. I would try to sound hyper-professional and use big words when I was fresh out of school and sound like I was older, and then when I realized that if I'm just myself and embrace at the time that I was very young, that people can hear when you're being genuine, and they're going to trust you more when they feel that from you. And I think that's really important because people don't trust salespeople as a general rule. But when they can tell that you're just being you and you're having a conversation with them and talking to them like you would talk to a friend or a colleague in the same room as you, I think that makes a big difference. And then I think the second part of that is from an AE perspective, your AEs can more humanize a conversation when they understand the goal of what they're doing instead of having a list of questions. So a lot of times I see sales managers giving an account executive, here's a list of questions you need to ask on call one, or even for the SDRs. You cannot get off that cold call until you ask these questions. And that kind of puts them in a box and causes them to not flow naturally with the conversation. And I find as I'm training new account executives, that's actually counterproductive. So instead, if I say, hey, on call one, here's the goal. You need to learn and accomplish these 4 things. And here's some sample questions you can ask, but as long as you know the goal, naturally you're going to be able to ask questions that guide you that way. That's been really helpful for us. Then in terms of...
Go ahead. Sorry, Tonni,
I was going to say in terms of customizing and personalizing, it's something we can dig into a little bit more. I see personalizing more as meaning personalizing to the individual, and then customizing, speaking more to customizing the conversation more around the business, the use case, the need. And I agree with what Katie's saying. It's so noisy now that you really have to customize and personalize your message. But I think there are ways that you can do that at scale. Instead of just emailing each person, say, hey, I see that you like Clemson. I'm a big Clemson fan too. That doesn't really add any value into the conversation. But instead, if sales and marketing can work together to equip account executives and SDRs to go into conversation saying, look, I'll be honest, I don't know that much about your business yet, but from what I do know and from what I'm guessing, I think we could provide value in these ways. That honesty, but then empowering them to have a more relevant conversation, I think, allows you to customize at scale.
Yeah, I'll sort of share a couple of things that we see in training that we talk to people about. So one is about honesty and sincerity, right? You can tell real sincerity. Some are better than others, I think. So going in with that level of making sure that you sound that way is a good first step. Um, the other thing that I think, Tony, you were saying you can hear it in the phone is, I've always said to people, you can hear when someone's smiling on the phone, right? You can tell when that's happening. In face-to-face sales, it was all about the nonverbal cues, body language, all those things. In inside sales, it's about listening skills and listening to the pace, listening to the tone of voice, recognizing your own pace and tone of voice, and adjusting accordingly. And also listening for the background noise of, what's going on in the background over there. You hear them typing away or not typing away. And again, at least knowing that, and there's lots of ways to do things when you hear that, which is not the purpose of today's call, but at least own that piece. And then the other thing that we've been testing with different organizations, and Tony, this speaks to what you said about having that call and making it very personal. And I've called it the 3 wise men, and not wise, W-I-S-E, but W-H-Y. So you can literally have a rep on the phone and say, hey, I've read about your profile, I've seen some stuff online, but why are we having this call today, right? And the prospect will probably say, oh, because of this, this, and this. It's like, okay, well, why do you want to solve that problem, right? And they'll give you another answer, and then you can, in theory, ask why one more time. And by focusing on why more so than what, I think that helps create that level of sincerity and honesty and personalization and humanization that Tony's talking about too. So I think that's really, really great. What are some specific tactics you guys have used to humanize or customize or personalize? Like, and again, without getting into a product pitch, by all means, tell us who you are, who you each target as your organization, and then how you actually apply that theory and those theories to what you're doing, so people can get a better understanding of, okay, well, that's great theory, but what's it look like in the real world?
Yeah, for sure. So, we kind of go after a couple of different use cases where, obviously branching out into, beyond marketing, but our traditionally is we sell into the marketing side of things. We work with companies that, have marketing automation and have a lot of video. So that is, a traditional, path and use case we go to. Now we're selling more and more into, the VP of sales, the director of sales, the, director of sales development. But what we have done, and some of the tactics that we've tried to actually humanize the approach is be there in video, because it's just so much better than being there in person. And like we were talking about, Richard, I think like it's a big thing that people aren't doing right now, and it's really helping to stand out. So one of the things that our reps do is kind of a simple voiceover video, and it essentially walks them through how we can add value on their website. So it's not, it's not a product pitch. It's not, hey, this is Vidyard. This is all the things that we do. Here are the 45 awesome things. It's like, here's your website. This is how I see you're using video. I think here we could provide value here, here, and here. And it's sending them out on that one-to-one level. So that's the big thing that we're doing on the video side for prospecting that really has a huge hit rate, because people are opening their email and they're like, oh, why is my website in there, and then they're clicking on it, and they're watching the video. Obviously we can see if they're watching it, how long they're watching it, those sorts of things, and we can follow up in that way. And I know we sent one over to you for a little test, so so that's one thing that has really helped us. And then I think the other thing, and maybe we'll get to this later, is just having a scheduled cadence. The big thing for us is really to not be giving up after that first try.
Right.
It's having that schedule that you're going through, and using tools like SalesLoft and those sorts of things. That's a really big tactic for us as well.
Yep. Tony, how about you guys? How are you humanizing, personalizing, customizing?
Yeah. Thank you for this question, because both what Vidyard does and what Terminus does are both tools, and we both sell, I think, more, well, I guess you guys probably sell to marketing and sales. We sell more to marketing,
Yeah.
but are both tools that aim to help our customers personalize, customize at scale.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool how the synergy works. And Vidyard tool works really well with our tool, Terminus. We're users of Vidyard internally, and I agree. I think when it comes to humanizing, video is a really important way that we've been starting to test out, and we're kind of at the early stages, so unfortunately I don't have great stats about how it's working for us yet. But from an SDR perspective, our Flip My Funnel event is actually today in Boston, and our SDRs made, I wouldn't say they personalized the video to each person, but they each made a video of the SDR saying, hey, please join us at the event. We love to see you there. This cute little video that they made, and they sent it out to prospects and had a really good open rate, and had a lot of those people ended up signing up for it or saying, hey, I can't attend, but I'd love to see a demo. So I think the video, when you see someone's face, especially a young SDR who's really passionate about what they do, that I think really resonated well. And they've also done things like, I think the day of the event this morning, the SDR will take a picture of themselves with our book, Account-Based Marketing for Dummies, and they'll tweet the picture to their top prospects and say, please come see me at the booth today. I have your copy of the book here. So that's a way to kind of humanize and personalize, but do it at scale, so it wasn't a different message for every individual. And then I would say more on the AE side, we're doing a lot of work on trying to customize our message after demo one. So the biggest follow-off, in any sales process is after the first meeting. Someone sees the demo and they forget, they go about their daily life and they're gone. So how do you keep their attention and keep them going through the sales process? And so I'm a big believer that when you do a great discovery and you actually ask the right questions to understand need, and then your follow-up content isn't just bland or isn't just self-centric. Here's what we do, here's how we're great, but specifically here's what our tool can do for you. That is way more powerful. And so we're building a couple new things. A lot of what we've been doing today is manual. We're building a couple new things with presentations that will allow the rep to say, okay, here are 10 benefits of Terminus, and I'll kind of delete the ones that aren't relevant and keep the top ones for my prospects, so it's a little more personalized. And then adding some notes from the last call. So I'm kind of rambling now, but I think a big theme for us is how do we better customize based on the company use case in our follow-up conversations, and that allows us to drive urgency, because my reps ask me all the time, well, how do I drive urgency in this deal? Well, you can if you're just talking about you. The only way you can drive urgency is if you understand the prospect and you're customizing your message every time you speak to them, to their need and their use case.
So I think those are great, and I'm going to sort of bring it back out to some high level. What I really heard, aside from your specific use cases too, was creativity matters, right? 5 years ago, 7 years ago, I'll date myself if I say 10 years ago, InMail was so cool. Like if someone sent me an InMail, it was like the coolest thing because someone found me online. Like that stroked your ego, right? Now InMail has become the new spam, right? And so understanding that means that you can no longer send, I don't think you can send the InMail that says, hey, let's have a meeting. You have to send an InMail that adds value so that later you can ask them, you can earn the right to ask for that meeting at the SDR space, right? So I think creativity is there. I think the tweeting thing is there. I'm starting to see more people engage in some of the social stuff because it is a direct one-to-one piece that really, really matters. And then, Tonni, to what you said, what all that comes down to around discovery is you better fucking listen. Sorry, like you better listen to your prospects and reiterate what you've heard. And so again, one of the things we teach is, so what do you do after the first meeting? Well, I have an email template that I send to every single prospect that ever comes to us, and I said, here's what we talked about, here are the next steps, here are your challenges, here's some additional resources, and then they end up using that to, circulate that through in their entire organization, because it's already going to be a consensus buy, and it saves your champion a bunch of time, and you're going to help them you're going to help them win. You're going to help win the business, not just because of what you do, but how you do it, which I think is also a big piece of this. That's the personalization and customization stuff. So I think that's really fascinating stuff.
One thing I was just thinking about when you said that, so something that at Terminus, since we're an account-based marketing company and our product is in that space, we think a lot about marketing to more of the right audience in an account. No longer is a decision ever made by one person, it's a committee. And I think to these points about customization, if you can customize really well, so if you're an SDR, you can customize the message, you're not only more likely to get that person on the phone, but potentially to get them to bring other people on that first demo. And then for an account executive, if you can customize that message, again, you're just more likely to be able to carry that conversation further. Yeah, I think that's a really important piece.
No, I think that's great. I think that's really great, which then sort of moves us into sort of our second surefire way, right? So the second way was sort of this diversification of channel, right?
Yeah.
It is noisy out there. It is crazy. So one, you have this great ability to talk to people and touch people in tons of different ways that are back to being more creative. But then you've got a process you've got to manage around that as well, while also making sure whether you're the SDR or the AE that you're hitting your freaking goal. You've also got that on top of it, right?
Yeah.
Particularly at startups. How do you guys see diversification? And diversification can come in two ways too, right? It could come in the channel itself, but then the message for that channel. What you can say in 140 characters is different than what you can say in a video, right?
Mm-hmm.
So understanding some of those nuances. And maybe for this one, Tonni, we'll start with you and let you answer this question first, if that's all right.
Yeah, sure. I think you kind of started to allude to a point that I think is really important. It's important to diversify channels. It's important to have your reps use as many channels as possible to reach your prospect, but I don't think it's good to force them to use all channels because some people just aren't comfortable. So I found that when we were a little bit younger as a startup, we tried to get all of our reps to do social selling. There was one guy, and he's not like he's even that old, but he's like an old soul. He's just very much like pick up the phone and call you kind of person. He's not really great at social, and that's fine. It works for him. He's killing it here. But he does a great job through his calls and emails of getting a hold of people and sharing the message. So I don't think forcing everyone to use every channel is wise, because if you're not going to use it the way that channel natively should be used, then it's not going to be effective anyway. But I do think it's important to explore as many as possible. Some that I really like right now, so obviously we all use email and phone, and we probably have a lot of great content on our website. I love video right now. I think so few people are doing it. It's a chance to set yourself apart, especially if you do it in email or you have other ways of getting people to that content. I like display advertising right now. That can be a great way to get more of the right audience learning about what you do. And then direct mail is coming back in big time. So you get so many emails, you forget what it's like to actually get a letter, but when you do, you usually open it. So Insight Squared, when I was in the buying process with them, they sent me at the very end of a quarter a case of Monster energy drinks with a note that said, have a monster quarter. And, that may not be the reason I would buy a product, but it definitely stood out in my mind and really made me feel something for that company and their brand. And so I thought that was really unique.
I think that's great. Yeah, I think the creativity is key there. Katie, how about you?
Yeah, I think when I think about the different channels, it's important to think about where your prospects are. And when you're prospecting in the marketing world, a lot of your marketing prospects are very socially focused, and they are on Twitter. And I like what Tonni said by not forcing every single one of your reps to be doing these things, but giving them the option to actually execute on it. Because if you're forcing a rep that just created a Twitter egghead account to to go and tweet people, it's certainly not going to have the same effect as it would for someone that tweets 4 or 5 times a day. So I certainly like that. Obviously we love video. One of the tactics that we're doing now is sending video voicemails. So instead of leaving a voicemail, just a quick screenshot, selfie video of hey, just wanted to connect. in just the quick image in the video or in the email, you know, as another, you know, separate touch point. Again, it's that personal aspect of it. It's like, I'm another person on the line. I'm not just a bot. I'm not just, you know, prospecting 800 people today. I'm like prospecting you specifically, Richard, and this is why, and this is how I'm adding you value. So.
Yeah. I think that, and I think that's great, and I'll sort of even take a step back. When you do these things, and I don't care if it's, you know, direct mail or email or Twitter, you know, the couple things to remember is, one, you better have a good message for the person you're reaching out to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because if you're going with a generic message, regardless of channel, you're just burning runway, right? The one thing that I know too, you know, I'm based in California, and so I do a lot of startup stuff, is that you know, startups are selling to startups, which is great. So we think this stuff is really cool and we kind of get it. But, you know, when you're selling into the real Fortune brands, when you're talking about real enterprise, and I mean Fortune enterprise, not Box and Dropbox and Eventbrite, not that those aren't enterprise accounts, but where you're talking with people who have 50,000 employees, you know, the people that you're marketing to or going after are often in that role for 5 or 10 years, right? They're there for a long time. In startup land, we're lucky if we're anywhere for 2 years, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where that message matters, and understanding that cadence matters. And, you know, and Katie, you said something really truthful too, which was, you know, don't go create a Twitter egg account. Well, I was like, I was actually surprised. I was like, you know, I never thought about it, but, you know, if you can't tweet about your own company from your own personal Twitter account, then there's a disconnect there. Right? Like you know, not say that your company owns your Twitter account, but, you know, be passionate about what you do. You always say you want to be passionate about yourself. Well, own it all the way through, right? So I think those things, messaging really matters. And the fake Twitter account is, again, it's a first sign of, you know, this isn't a fake person or a real person. It's a fake personalization. So what are some of the things that you've seen, both of you, on either of these pieces of humanize, customize, personalize, or diversify, where you're like, oh, that's a good try, but it still feels fake, right? Like, you know, the obvious one to me is, hey, I was doing some research on your LinkedIn profile and thought I'd connect with you. And it's like, you know, that's no longer, that worked 5 years ago, right? How do you know when someone's being fake to you? Because I'm sure you guys get sold to all the time.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. I think when they don't add value, when they don't add that next line of, this is how I looked at your company, yes, but this is how I actually think we can help. I see you're doing this, this, and this, not just, you know, hey, I see you, you see me, let's talk. You got to add that next line, or it just comes across as a template. And, you know, Tony, I'm sure you get them all the time too, of, you know, just template, and, you know, if you add that next little line, it makes a big difference.
Tony, we lost you.
Oh, we can't hear you.
No. Tony? Okay, hold on one second. She's going to dial in.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah,
now
we can hear you now.
There you go. Excellent.
I had to
Awesome.
move to computer audio. Sorry about that. If someone, I get a ton of emails now. If someone emails me and there's nothing customizable at all about it, I literally just delete it. And I hate it when people say, if you're not the right one, is there someone else that you can connect me with? I know some people advise you to do that, but to me it's like, I'm the only sales leader in this company. If you're selling a product to a sales leader, like, why the hell would I not be the right person? And if you don't know that, that's a problem. So, I mean, to me, it's insulting if you don't know anything about me. Granted, I don't think you should spend too much time, you know, researching every prospect, but if you don't know anything about me, don't bother emailing me. I'm not going to respond.
Right.
That's a big one for me.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point that you bring up, Tony. I know, you know, John Barrows just wrote an amazing article on LinkedIn recently about, you know, that top-down approach is just, it you know, maybe worked 6 years ago, but everyone's using it now. And, you know, you can't just call blind and say, you know, who should I talk to about this? Especially, you know, you got to know your company and know your audience. Are you calling a 120-person company, or you know, you're calling a, you know, 5,000-person company where there might actually be a confusing amount of people that you might need to talk to. So
Yeah. I want to add something too, where you talked about adding value. I teach this in the cadence stuff, is that it's absolutely important to have a touch in your cadence that does one thing, which is add value and ask for nothing in return,
Mm-hmm.
right? Don't ask for the meeting. Just say, hey, I saw this. I thought you'd like this article. Talk to you later, right? And a lot of times people say, well, how do I know if I'm adding value into my email? It says, well, if you can take out the part that says, can I schedule a meeting? How do I get time on your calendar? If you can take out your ask and the prospect's going to think, oh, that might be interesting, then you've gotten closer to adding value, right?
Yeah.
And that also means the other piece of that too is it can't be just about yourself. Like, hey, we're helping you reduce sales and turn cycle, your sales cycle and whatever. It's got to be adding value to them. So it's almost like giving them an article from the industry or giving them something that shows that you're thinking about them and their role separate of whatever it is you're really trying to get from them. And the business leaders in the world will know what you're doing. They get it, but I don't think they're going to fault you, right? I call everybody's inbox, look, everybody's got the most precious real estate any person has these days is their inbox, right? And
Yep.
whether you allow yourself to see 5 messages or 25 messages, don't mess with someone's precious real estate, right? If you're using that particular method. Got a couple of questions coming from the audience, so I want to acknowledge those real quick. We had Matt ask a question of, do you ever customize the landing page for your prospect, right? So, and Matt, I'm going to make the assumption that does each individual person get a landing page that maybe has their name on it? Is the technology there for that? Or is a specific landing page for the campaign, which I do think does exist, but, what are you guys doing around that customization piece, right? How do you guys both see that? Katie, I'll let you go
Yeah,
first.
so as far as it works from like a video perspective, yeah, it's a personalized landing page that will say like, hey, here's your video for Richard Harris, and we have a customized Vidyard landing page that we use, and then companies, can have their own customized. Terminus has, one that they use when they send out their videos. That it has their branding and it looks and feels like them. It doesn't look and feel like they're sending it on a Vidyard page, but it's not like each rep is going in and coding a landing page. It just self-generates itself.
It does. Okay. Do you have any data as like, oh, we think that's helping, like we're seeing, a slightly higher conversion rate, or, and by conversion I mean taking the meeting, not even necessarily closing the deal, but are you getting more people into the top of the funnel?
Yeah, like what we see is a higher incidence of people responding through email than just catching them on the phone.
Got it.
So people will actually respond back to us in the emails
Mm-hmm.
more often than obviously through call, and referencing that exact, hey, I saw this video, this is why I'm calling you back.
Right.
We get a really high response rate on that.
Mm-hmm.
But then I think, I know we're going to touch on, the tracking and the optimization piece. We're doing some, little tweaks around, how can we optimize the splash screen, and how can we optimize, our click-through rates on those specific videos
Mm-hmm.
as well.
So, great. I got another question. Oh, sorry, Tony. Go for
I
it.
was just going to chime in. There is definitely technology that allows you to customize landing pages, as Katie alluded to. I think that works, and it sounds like they're having some great success, but I think the key is if you can at least customize your content, whether it's landing page or wherever you have it stored, based on use case, industry, whatever is relevant for your audience. I think that's really important versus just generic content.
Yeah, and I would remind everybody, there's a difference between understanding your use cases and your case studies, right? Use cases are sort of horizontal, right? They go across all verticals. Case studies often tend to, well, the concept of what they're solving is horizontal. It does get very specific in a vertical way. So learning that as part of your messaging, I think, is really, really important too. Another great question coming in, and this one's a little painful for me because I'm not quite there yet, maybe 18 months away. What's the best marketing method to address the over 50-year-old executive, right? We see this all the time. It's a great question, right? Oh, Tony doesn't want to answer it, it looks like.
No, I will.
Go for it, Tony. Tell us what you think, and keep in mind I'm 48, and I might need to turn my hearing aids up, but go ahead.
I'm sure there's no one silver bullet or perfect approach, obviously. But what I will say, we've found internally that display advertising has been a good way to reach that audience, especially when those people are executives. So often an executive, especially, or just someone who's older, may not come to your website to download content. They may not check an email from an SDR or answer a cold call, right? They're very hard to reach. And even when they're doing research, they'll send someone else to do research for them. So how do you get in front of them? Display advertising, if you can do it in a proactive way, can allow you to get in front of that audience, whether they like it or not. So whether or not they click on your ad, you can't control, but you can at least get your message and your branding in front of them. So I think that's one powerful way. And then back to direct mail. I think direct mail can be a great way where if someone gets direct mail to their office, as long as you mail it to the right place, they're going to open it probably. So
Yeah, I think that's true. I think, again, that's about knowing your audience, right?
Yeah.
If they're old, if they're quote unquote old school, well, an old school might work for them, right? And it should be a combination of all of it, right? Like we've talked about this, it's multiple channels, right? It is LinkedIn and Twitter, and even to this extent today's age, Snapchat's coming along, and Facebook ads. Like what Facebook is doing for advertising is crazy, and even on the business side, like it's totally shifting. So I think that's really great. Katie, what about you guys? Have you?
Yeah,
You guys are real new technology, right?
yeah. I think like what I was going to say is, it's just about, like you said, knowing your audience and knowing who you're going after, because if maybe they're quote unquote like over 50, but they're on Twitter and they have a really up-to-date LinkedIn profile, like it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not a part of like the digital world. And especially in marketing and in those kinds of industries, people are still on top of those things. But yeah, I definitely like Tony's comment around going back to direct mail and trying to engage them in that way. But also I think they appreciate the personalized approach, because what they've been hit with over the last 5 to 10 years is that that bot of over and over and over again of the same message, not personalizing it to that individual person. I think that just goes a long way, and I think that's more ageless in any way. People appreciate when you go after their own internal and individual cares and use cases.
Absolutely. That's that humanized piece, right? And personalized piece. Yep. Let's talk a little bit more around diversification, right? How do you each, we've got some more questions from the audience too. We'll try to get to those, but how are you guys diversifying your outreach in different channels? Like what are some of the examples you're using, whether it's social, traditional, what's the new and cool thing you're doing?
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Tony.
Sorry. I think I shared a lot of things we're doing. I mean, so we just started using Vidyard's video channel for our sales team, so our marketing's been using it for a long time. We're starting to use it more in like the event example I gave earlier, starting to use it for the SDRs and their cold outreach to humanize those messages, and then also for the account executives to start sending more of our video case studies and videos. Our co-founder, Sangram, does a lot of videos, so video has been a new thing that we're really starting to explore more and more, that I am excited once we start to get results back on what that's doing for us. We're trying to up our presence on social. We do sell-to marketing, so marketers are often active on social. We've done some experimenting with different ways to reach out to people. As Jill Rowley always says, we encourage the team not to be social slutty by liking everything that they do, but having a good cadence of how often they reach out. But I think the important thing is recognizing that these things often are playing the long game. When you're nurturing someone with this personalized approach, and doing outbound as opposed to inbound, some of these buyers aren't ready to buy now, but you're making a really good impression on them that long-term will do your business and your brand a lot of good. So I think that's an important element too, is realizing that some of these things will take longer. If you cold call 100 people and you get one on the phone, but they're ready to buy now, that can be a quick win. But some of these other ways of engaging with people, help you to build longer-term relationships.
Yeah, I think Trish, I was talking on a panel the other day or on a webinar with her, and she mentioned that it's not social selling. That's a bad word. It's social prospecting.
Yeah.
Because that's what you're doing. You're prospecting through social. You're not selling, right? But anyway, how about you, Katie? I know you you tried to jump in on this one too.
Yeah, I was going to say it kind of goes back to what you were saying about the no ask touch, right? You know, I think that's something really important that we add into, you know, our cadences, and it also goes back to that really close alignment with marketing, because you can't have that no ask touch without having that piece of content. So what we're doing with our demand gen team is, you know, they make sure when you know, when they're launching a new campaign, that they also service up, you know, complementary content that we can use in our outbound efforts. And we can serve that content to say, you know, hey, Richard, you know, I thought of you, you know, we have this new guide out. Wanted to share this. I think this would be really helpful for you. So it's really top of mind for them, so that they don't have to, you know, go digging for it, because, you know, even as a startup, you know, we already have so many assets and so much content, and, you know, Tony, I'm sure you guys feel the same way. It builds up quick. So to make it really easy for our reps to send that out is really, really important. So it doesn't get skipped.
Richard, can I ask Katie a question?
Yeah. Go for it.
I would love to hear, Katie, from you with your SDR team, how you empower them to customize and personalize. You know, I think with SDRs, especially if they're young, to some degree you need to give them content and give them a roadmap. You don't want them to go off track too much. But then the whole point of what we're talking about is that you should use your brain, actually customize it, and not send everyone the same thing. So
Yeah.
how have you done that, empowered your team?
So, you know, we've done a lot around kind of messaging brainstorms and round tables, and really kind of had input from them. We also share a lot with them around, you know, what's going on in the industry news in SDR. You know, this is what people are talking about. You know, in our weekly meetings, we talk a lot about that kind of stuff. So, you know, they don't feel, you know, isolated and that they're the only SDRs. You know, we have that, you know, a little bit of a disadvantage where, you know, we're a Canadian company in a tech region, but there are not a lot of other similar companies that have SDRs like we do. So it's not like when you're at a Salesforce or when you're in, you know, in the Bay Area, where, you know 800 other SDRs, and, you know, you guys all talk about the same stuff. So I think just making that world to them known, that's a really big part of it. I think what we actually have to try and do on the other side of is make sure that they don't swing so far into the personalized area and spend 2 hours writing 4 emails.
Yeah.
That's, you know, because they're like, okay, this is awesome. Like, I want to do this, and I'm going to do, you know, some research on Richard, and this is great. And, you know, it's so like you brought up, it's important to balance the, you know, the personalization aspect with the volume aspect. So.
That's great. In fact, that actually goes right to a question from the audience, from Dara, who said, you know, how long should you spend researching and customizing the message? How many prospects should you reach a day? I think we all have our own unique answer, but I'm going to let obviously the ladies should go first on that one, but that's a great question. Thanks for asking it.
Yeah.
It depends completely on who you're selling to. So at Terminus, we sell to marketers, we sell to mid-market companies. I think our SDRs, I don't manage that team anymore, but I believe they put about 40 to 50 new people, not necessarily new companies, into their cadence each day. And they personalize each email a little bit, but they have a template they use so they can kind of personalize at scale. But, you know, my husband works for a company where they sell to CTOs. And so they will spend 15 to 30 minutes sometimes writing an email to a CTO, or you're finding someone who can make an introduction for them. And even though they won't reach nearly as many people in a day, that's way more valuable. They'll schedule more appointments by doing that, and their deal size is much bigger than ours. So there is definitely no one right or wrong answer. And probably even in your business, it'll take you doing some testing to determine what's the right method, but you really need to think about deal size, your audience, figure it out from there.
Yeah, I think from our side too, it really depends because we sell not necessarily just to the mid market. We sell all the way down to small businesses of 10 people up to big companies like Microsoft and Salesforce, and you can't just have a one size fits all approach. But so depending on what segment they're in, they essentially what we call profile. Anywhere from 2 to 3 companies a day, doing that background research all up ahead and in front, and then add them to their cadence so that the next day they can come in 8:30, hit the phones, call all those people all at once, instead of having to go back and be like, okay, what does Richard do? Okay, what does he care about again? Okay, and who else should I call from that company? So we try and front load all that in anywhere from half hour to an hour a day.
I can't wait to get all these customized emails and touches that Katie's, pimping me for. So thank you. I think there's one piece of advice that I first heard. I think Jason said it first. Jason Vargas over at Data Nice, a really smart guy in this space. I know Tonni knows him. Katie, I don't know if you know him, but he always talked about, and it also could have been Daniel Barber, but this sort of 10-80-10 rule, right? As you build out your custom email templates or voicemail templates, the first 10% could be very personal. The next 80% is, your what I call your awareness statement, meaning the value you add, and maybe a list of a couple of companies you're helping solve a specific problem. And then the last 10% is personal, so that it is not, a full rehash on every single thing. And there's ways to do that. And then obviously there's a lot of tools out there. Sales Loft Cadence is one that you're hearing several times today. That's great at really helping the SDR really manage, all these people, particularly in which also sort of shifts me to my next question, which is also coming from the audience. And again, I promise it's not a product plug question, but what do you do when the decision, yes, it's a committee, but it could come out of the finance department, it could come out of the operations department, it could go out of, it could come out of a lot of different places. How do you target that? How does that look? And obviously, Tonni, that's a nice tee up for you. But what are you guys seeing? Like, how are you approaching that?
I certainly think it's a challenge, especially from a data perspective, because buying data can be expensive even if you don't buy a list. If you use, we used Sales Loft Prospector and ZoomInfo, a number of data knives, different data tools, and purchasing all the names or the leads or people that you want to reach can be expensive. So it can be hard. And then if you're selling a tool to HR, but finance is really involved and the hiring managers are involved, you may not want to reach out to those people directly with emails, but you want them to be aware of what you do. Back to Jill Rowley, last time I saw her, she said back in the day when she was a sales rep at Salesforce, she said she would send a direct mail package to the head of sales, and then sometimes the head of marketing, CFO, and she'd pick a couple people from different departments and send them all the same thing. And so one person's wearing the Salesforce hat or t-shirt around the water cooler in the break room, whatever. And they're like, oh, hey, I got one of those too. And it starts a conversation in the business. So there are probably a number of ways that you can do that. Obviously, one way that I think of is with a solution like a Terminus, which in our case helps companies to put display messages in front of more of the right audience. So you're not actually having to call and email, say, the finance team, but you can still start to build awareness. I think direct mail and display are two good ways to do that. Anything else come to mind, Katie?
I think the other thing that I think of that I know you talked about before was like arming your salesperson to help train the champion on how to sell internally. And I think that's what you're trying to do with your decks that you're creating and giving those people, because they're now the people that have to go turn around and sell your product internally, and they're not always the best equipped to be the person that does that. So the more you can arm them with content, whether it be, white papers, videos, decks that you create for them. One thing that I know that we do on our sales team is we give them a deck that they can go present to their leadership or their champions to make it really easy for them, because, asking for technology budget, and in our case, it's usually budget that companies don't have. Companies aren't saying, oh my God, we have a video problem. Here's our budget that we have. And, maybe no one is doing that, but it's not like selling CRM where it's a need everywhere. And, so we're helping arm the internal champions to sell internally for us when we can't be there.
Cool. So there's two more topics I want to get to with about 9 minutes to go. One is on tracking and adjusting, right? Sort of this is the third piece, right? Whether it's humanize, personalize, customize, this diversification, and then of course tracking and adjusting off of this diversification and messaging and all that kind of stuff. I'd like to try and get to that, in a couple of minutes. The other thing is, which I think is really important, is how do you scale, right?
Yep.
What are the tools you're using to scale? And again, and I remind this to people all the time, is that there's a difference between being efficient with tools and being effective, right? There's a lot of tools that'll help you get into more sales conversations, but you also need to make sure that your reps are trained to have good conversations. Otherwise, you're burning your runway and scorching the earth. But sort of maybe speak to tracking and adjusting, and again, Katie, for you guys, you're a new technology. You are a technology that focuses on this video piece that we were talking about today. How are you tracking and adjusting? What have you heard your clients say about how they're tracking and adjusting? Maybe Tonni can even talk about it a little bit too.
Yeah, I mean, for us, how we're tracking and adjusting, the things that we're doing with our messaging is, we're looking at what our click-through rates are like. When we first started doing some of the customized videos, we noticed our click-through rate was at, a certain rate, and we changed a few tweaks in the background, and it made our, click-through rate go crazy. It made it go up, and that was just showing the prospects website on the splash screen instead of our website. So it helped them understand that this video was going to be about them. It wasn't going to be just, our marketing's video saying like, hey, this is all the things about Vidyard. That was one of the things. And then I think around, your question towards scaling and how we're doing that, we're constantly trying to make tweaks. And so right now what we're doing is, we have an intern on our team that helps make, these 90-minute explainer individualized videos. But what we've done recently, and we're rolling this out shortly, is we've recorded a video of all of our SDRs, similar to what Tonni did for her event campaign. And at a click of a button, in the background, the actual video will generate, and we'll be able to send that out. So to make it faster, and essentially what we want to do is we want to be able to show externally how we've done that process to other SDR organizations, and like, listen, like, video isn't that hard. If we can do it, like, here's how you can do it. Here's kind of the roadmap on, how you can do these things and how you can help your org be different and, be out there, and instead of just call, email, maybe a tweet, call, email. So.
I think the reporting and tweaking part is hard. It's harder than it should be, mostly because of time. All of us, maybe I shouldn't say especially those of us in startups, I guess everyone's busy everywhere, but when you're running really fast, trying a lot of new things, it can be very easy, very tempting to just run with something and not test it and not understand what's working. And I know I have fallen prey to that at times because I feel like I'm pulled a lot of directions as a sales leader. But something our CMO, Sangram, here at Terminus always says is 10x results, meaning everything we do, whether sales, marketing, whatever team, it should have 10x results. And so we would rather do less things, try less things, use less tools, and really use them to make an impact, a noticeable impact, instead of using more, and then always understanding what worked and what didn't.
So when we first started trying to do ABM ourselves, account-based marketing ourselves at Terminus, we picked this campaign we thought would be really awesome. So Vidyard was a customer, video marketing company. We said, let's pick all like 60 of the video marketing companies out there, and let's run this super customized campaign. Say, hey, Vidyard, this video marketing company is using Terminus this way. Here's how you can use it too. And the campaign failed miserably, and the reason why is it could sound like such a great idea on paper. Let's customize, personalize based on this little kind of niche group, but come to find out most of the other companies in that space were super small, not in our ICP. We didn't even double check that. We just ran with the campaign. And so, you know, even though they sound like they're the same space on paper, what Vidyard does is very different than what most of these other companies did. And so the messaging was great, but it didn't resonate with the audience, and again, it wasn't the right fit. So I think slowing down, understanding what you're actually trying to accomplish, and then going back and looking at the results is really important. And anytime you buy a technology, I can tell you this from experience, make sure to really ask questions about what does reporting look like, so you understand that before you buy it, and make sure it will show you the information you would need to know.
That's great. And so let's talk a little bit about scale. We got a couple of minutes left. We might go over by a minute if people need to jump off. You know, feel free. We love having you here. But in the meantime, talk about scale. How do you how do you do this with 10 SDRs, 15 SDRs, 20, 30, 60? You know, how do you do that?
Yeah, I think, I mean, for us, it's important. You know, all of these 20 people don't report directly to me, thank God for them, because they wouldn't get any attention. But, you know, I think it's about having really great leaders that they individually report to. That obviously really helps us as well. But then, like, you know, going back, it's like enabling them with tools. Okay, we're gonna shoot a video, and you're gonna be able to generate it and send that out. You know, here's the content. You're gonna be able to generate it and send that out. You know, you're not. They're not having to go in and actually do that. And I think, you know, as a leader of a sales development team, and I'm sure Tony, you feel this way as well. It's like, you know, you're always selling. I'm just not selling externally anymore. I'm selling to my own individual reps, and I'm trying to get them on board with different ideas and different things that we're doing, and different ways and tactics, and then enabling the leaders on my team to help the individual people do those sorts of things. But I think making it go really big is still something that there's other ways that we can optimize that, and using marketing's content. I think so that goes back to that really close alignment with marketing.
Great. So I want to do one more little mention of some sales hacker things, and then I do want everybody, I'd love for you to each tell the audience what you guys do, so if they do want to talk to you about things. Oh, good. A cold email. How's your business? ? Love those. Right on point. I do want to let the people know that if you are in the Phoenix area tonight, there is a meetup. You can find out about it at Sales Hacker. It's at Allbound at 5 o'clock Phoenix time. And if you happen to be lucky enough to be in Sydney, Australia, there's going to be one at Fishburners on August 24th. So I still have time to book a ticket, and then can, of course, convince my wife. But those are a couple of meetups if you want to try and meet people from the Sales Hacker community, share ideas, share thoughts, and just socialize and network, which we've seen been a great tool for everyone. With that being said, before we go, Toni, you want to tell people what Terminus does, just so in case they're interested in hearing about it?
Of course. Terminus is an account-based marketing platform, so we're trying to help our customers target the right people and the right accounts with their message wherever they go online in a proactive way. So we do that through display advertising. So we can target the X decision makers in a certain list of companies proactively with ads. So when they're on CNN, ESPN, they're on their lunch break looking at an article on Business Week, they're going to see a customized message from that company.
Great. Awesome. Katie, obviously thank you, and please thank everybody over at Vidyard for hosting this.
Absolutely.
Let everybody know if they haven't figured it out yet. What's Vidyard doing these days?
So Vidyard is a video marketing platform. We allow you to host all of your video all in one place. You're able to organize it all in one place, push it out to different platforms all in one place, and then obviously use it on the sales side to be able to send out video through tools like Gmail and Outlook. It's essentially kind of like your all-in-one hub of video, and then on the back end, the tracking piece is obviously near and dear to our heart. Who's watching the video, how long they're watching it, and then marketers can use it for demand gen, and then salespeople can use it because they can see that, Richard Harris actually watched 60% of their video, and he rewatched, the first 10 seconds. So
that's
great. A small nutshell.
Awesome. And I have seen it. You guys did send me, when we were preparing for this, I had one of your reps send me something. It's pretty cool. It's definitely worth looking at. And also, clearly what Tony's doing too, I've seen and have been pointing around with that one.
Love Terminus.
So,
it definitely helps with our inbound marketing efforts to get people into the right places. So
that's the end of our product pitch of the show. So thank you everybody for attending, and Tonni and Katie, thank you both so much for entertaining us and sharing all your thought leaderships with us, because we really do appreciate it. It's been a great session, and we'll see you next time.
Awesome. Thanks guys. Bye.
Bye.
Bye everybody.